Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, a disturbing thriller. I've got my review of Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter. So it's probably worth starting by talking about the way I described the book in the introduction to this video. So I described Pretty Girls as a disturbing thriller, and that's definitely the way I've seen it described in a number of different places, in reviews and things like that. And a lot of people recommended this book to me as a book to read for my Disturbing Books project, and a thrilling and suspenseful book that they thought I would enjoy. I know a lot of people out there really like this book, really rate it. I have to say, I didn't think it was very good. I didn't think it was very disturbing, and I didn't think ultimately that it was very thrilling either, albeit the first half is definitely extremely gripping. But I think it's a book that falls into a pitfall that a lot of modern thrillers do. So that's what I wanted to talk about in this review. But before I do that, let me tell you what the book's about. So the book is about two women who are sisters, who had a third sister who disappeared when they were younger, and their kind of lives and their family, their parents and things like that, have been consumed by this desire to find out what happened to this missing sister. But they have, managed to move on to an extent and build their own lives as adults. There is, kind of woven into this story, and I'm going to try not to get too much into the detail for fear of spoilers, but there is woven into the story a plot around snuff movies as well. So there's quite a lot going on in this book, and it is quite complicated at times. And I think that for me was one of the problems with it. Now, the snuff movie element of it is definitely disturbing, and there are some scenes in here where where characters watch these snuff movies, which are definitely graphic and horrific and disturbing, but they are a tiny part of the overall book. And whilst those individual scenes were disturbing, I found that once you got past those scenes, the book became much less disturbing. So that concept, the concept is disturbing, but I didn't feel like the book made the most of it. And it's a book that's much more interested in being a complex, convoluted kind of mystery than it is a disturbing book, if that makes sense. And Karin Slaughter is an author I've read over the years. So I read her first few books when they came out and enjoyed those. I thought they were, decently done kind of forensic mysteries, very, very graphic, and Pretty Girls is very graphic at times. But I thought she did those things well in her earlier books. But this one, as I say, was definitely a disappointment for me. I was looking forward to reading it, but I felt like it fumbled things. So let me talk about why that is, and why I think this is something that I see again and again in modern thrillers. So, as I've said, the concept is there's this missing girl. There's these two women. There's another girl recently who's gone missing in the local area, and there's this element of snuff movies. So there's all this different stuff going on, and what you could have ended up with here, I think, is a really suspenseful novel where they try and find out where this missing girl is, and rescue her. And that's kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting a book that was disturbing because of the imminent threat of horrible things happening to a character, and you don't really get that. What you get instead is an increasingly complicated mystery that just had far too many threads for me, far too many different characters involved in it, and the scale of what is going on just expands and expands and expands as the book progresses. And I think a lot of modern books do that. A lot of modern books seem to think that the way to be an interesting thriller is to make things as complicated as possible, to throw as many red herrings in as possible, to have as many possible suspects as possible, and just to keep the reader guessing consistently throughout the book. And a lot of the time when that's done, and this certainly happens in Pretty Girls, is that the reader, the writer presents things to the reader to trick them. So presents them in a certain way so that you think that thing A is happening, when actually you discover later on in the book that you were slightly misled and actually a different thing is happening. That certainly happens in Pretty Girls again and again. And it's something as a reader I find quite frustrating. And I was thinking back reading this to that Hitchcock quote about the difference between shock and suspense. So Hitchcock said, if you imagine a film of two people sitting at a table, like negotiating or something like that, I think the concept is, and suddenly a bomb goes off and they are, blown to smithereens, that would be shocking. That would surprise the viewer. Whereas a suspense version of that would be that the bomb is there. You can see the countdown kind of ticking away. And when you are willing, the protagonist or whatever, to manage to get to the bomb and defuse it. So you get suspense. The Pretty Girls version of that is a really, really complicated mystery where the protagonist is having to try and figure out why the bomb is there, who put the bomb there, how these 6 different people have conspired to get the bomb there. And that just distracts you from the actual tension of trying to defuse the bomb, which is what would make this a really gripping read. So in the first half of the book, things are set up reasonably well in terms of, telling you what these different mysteries are, introducing the different characters. And there are some twists in the first half of the book which are, quite intriguing and interesting and definitely, kept me gripped. But in the second half of the book, the twists get more and more ridiculous. More and more I felt like I was being tricked, like I had been deceived by the author in the first part of the book. And more I felt myself pulled away from this central concept of kind of snuff movies and things like that, which is disturbing, and into this kind of much bigger, convoluted mystery that there were elements of that just didn't make sense to me at times. And I felt like my brain power, if you like, was being taken up with keeping track of the mystery elements and keeping track of all the twists, rather than focusing on the suspense of someone in peril who needed to be rescued. I think this could have been a much stronger book if it had had a much narrower scope and hadn't been so complicated. And also if it had been shorter. So this book is like 550 pages long, which is like twice as long as it needs to be. And I think a lot of modern books get caught up in that trap of just layering more and more complexity on, more and more pages on, and get away from a really tight, short, tense thriller. So going back to Hitchcock, a book I read a couple of years ago, which I thought was fantastic, was the book that Psycho is based on, so Psycho by Robert Bloch, which is about 130 pages long, I think, and is enormously tense throughout. Doesn't have any complexity to it. If you think about the movie of Psycho, apart from the twist at the end, you kind of, what is going on. You know when people are in peril. So you get that suspense, and there's just that one twist at the end that gets you, yeah? Whereas Pretty Girls has twist after twist after twist, and it gets a bit bewildering and exhausting after a while. So yeah, for me, it didn't work because it was too complicated. And as I've said, I see this with a lot of mystery novels, a lot of thrillers. So I think for me, the modern definition of thriller is this kind of, domestic suspense kind of book where, often a female character discovers some dark secret and spends the rest of the book trying to get to the bottom of that secret and stop it from escalating into something really horrific. So that's what Pretty Girls could have been, and instead it becomes this really, really complicated mystery that, frankly, I don't think Karin Slaughter is a good enough writer of mystery to pull off. I think she can be a really good writer of suspense. I think she's capable of writing really suspenseful situations and passages and things like that. But when she tries to do a complicated mystery, for me, it just got ridiculous after a while. So unfortunately, Pretty Girls was a duff for me. So I hope you found that interesting. Do let me know in the comments if you read Pretty Girls and what you thought of it. I know a lot of people really do think it's good, really think it's gripping, and really think it's disturbing. But as I said, for me, it just fell apart in that second half. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.